May 25th, 2022. Well, I was going to get into this about the some of the issues that Biden generated during his trip to Asia, having to do with this all-electric future and things of that sort. But it looks like that the tragedy in Uvalde, Texas, the elementary school massacre, obviously kind of preempts that topic, and of course, um, the the political fallout of that is about to occur. This is turning into basically almost another Sandy Hook. I mean, I think this is, except it will be in a different state, a different political environment, I suspect. And it's a out and out tragedy, as everybody's saying, and my opinion is it's probably a copycat. Usually the copycats are less um, destructive than the original event because they're usually done more impromptu. But you see the similarity in a lot of ways to what happened in New York just a few days ago. And I mean, both of them are 18 years old. Both of them wore body armor. Both of them apparently had similar weapons and so forth. And we'll have to get into at this stage. I really don't know what exact weapon was used, but I kind of can suspect. Any rate, so I want to, kind of get into that subject today here, and a little bit. So please, subscribe if you haven't already, and give me a like if you support the videos. It helps out with the algorithm. This will probably be controversial, but my opinion is that this is really a mixture of sort of a mixture of mental illness and I think an insane, immoral desire for fame on the part of certain people that are obviously probably have fundamentally low self-esteem and are somehow struggling to prove themselves in some way to be significant. And of course, the results are tragic. This is, obviously, you get into the issue of, what kind of a twisted person would do such a horrible thing, and I fully agree with that. It's just disgusting. On the other hand, we immediately are beginning to see the normal people in the Democrat Party touting, led by President Biden, touting their gun control agenda as usual. Of course, the fact of the matter is that if one were to pursue a approach along those lines to be effective, it would require the complete elimination of all modern firearms that are used for self-defense, etc. In other words, not just certain rifles, but pistols and everything. I mean, perhaps you could stay with revolvers and bolt-action rifles for hunting, break-action shotguns. But if all these other things weren't eliminated, you could still have this. One of the worst massacres of this sort was the Virginia Tech University massacre many years ago, which were carried out with two basic handguns, a 9mm and I think a 22, and most of the magazines were, nothing particularly spectacular. I think many of them were 10 rounders. So the fact of the matter is you can't gun control your way out of this situation without having a completely disarmed population. I think that's clearly against the Second Amendment, and I don't think that'll fly. So the other measures being proposed will be basically not effective. And as you can see, in the New York case, which has a very strong gun control measures of the type that could be passed theoretically, they were proved ineffectively and were defeated by the perpetrator. So it really is kind of futile. I mean, for instance, they talk about things such as, of course, the universal background check, but of course, what do we have here? The person turned 18 and passed the background check. Because of course he probably hadn't really done much of anything before this. And that's typically the case in these sort of situations. Apparently he had a handgun also. I don't know if it was even used or not in the crime. And of course, that would have been illegal under federal law. Somebody on TV is saying that you can purchase this in Texas legally from a private person, but the private person's violating federal law if they do it. So I think they're misunderstanding the situation. Um, Basically, however, there's all kind of people, criminals throughout the country, particularly like in places like the high crime cities, Chicago and New York and Philadelphia and all these places. There's plenty of underage people running around with handguns shooting people. And cumulatively, in terms of young children being hit, in this case mainly by stray bullets rather than deliberate actions, it probably over a period of a time would count up to as many as are lost in these horrible mass shooting tragedies. I mean, I can only think of two in recent years, Sandy Hook and this, that where the targets were actually elementary school children. So, but at any rate, this battle will probably ensue in Congress, and we'll see what transpires there. But at any rate, as I said, that no specific kind of weapons necessary to perpetrate these sort of things, particularly if the victims are such small children. This is an absolute sick thing. I do have a thought on what might be effective. Everybody wants to go after the Second Amendment, but I wouldn't say going after the First Amendment. But I would point out the following, that, for instance, it's been a policy of mass media almost uniformly to, basically, typically not give out names of juveniles, but particularly women that are rape victims. Or the victims are usually not named in these coverages, like when there's a trial, and it's been kind of a policy not to do it. And I think that if detailed and exhaustive coverage of these mass shootings was not put on the national media, but perhaps rather oblique and limited national media reports of basically what happened, and then kind of leave it at that, at least in the immediate aftermath, unless there's a trial or something, if the person is captured alive. I think that would do more than anything else you could do, certainly more than any gun measure would do, would be to, of course, there'd be local coverage. The local media would obviously cover it. But rarely ever do these things get repeated in the local area. It's the fact that there's a small number of twisted people throughout an entire country. And this mass media notoriety, I think, motivates these people in many instances more than any other factor. So my thought, if they weren't given cover, I think the copycat cases would at least be limited. And I think this would be much less frequent. That would be my suggestion. But of course, we know the mass media will not do that because they want to use this issue as a political weapon, and they really do want to destroy the Second Amendment and disarm the public. I think this is part of their ongoing plan to gain total power. And so, I mean, obviously it's hard to have total power unless you do have a disarmed public. And so I think that is really why the media will probably not agree to do this. But of course, that would be the only measure I think, and at least would have an immediate effect on a broad national base. Locally, of course, I do agree with the people that you can harden the schools and make the schools, more difficult to enter. I mean, obviously the fence around that school was easy to jump. Obviously, it's been more like a fence that was maybe twice as tall and had razor wire on the top of it that totally surrounded the school, with a locked gate and so forth. Probably this whole thing wouldn't have even happened, So those kind of measures are helpful. Obviously, armed security can be helpful. However, again, you're getting into a situation where if you have people wearing body armor that are coming at you and stuff like that, which didn't used to be the case. So that there are, everything you do is a limited use. But I think but what we're going to witness is going to be an attempt to turn this into a political issue. I'm not sure it will be effective, but it's like, there's so many issues buzzing around, and I think as long as the filibuster holds, I think that the massive gun bans will be not successful. We'll have to see what happens here. But I think that that really the gun control measure approach is kind of shown to be inadequate. Let's just look at the Chicago situation. I mean, and in New York, I mean, they're not fully prosecuting these people who clearly are illegally carrying guns. They're violating both state and federal laws. They're underage, and if they were taken off the street and properly prosecuted, all these wild shootings in these towns, not the massacre type, but the type that really kill the most people. These massacres, they get a lot of attention because a large number of people are lost in a single event. But in reality, the mass of people that are killed in murders, including children, are one at a time, two at a time in these cities, and not these high-profile events. So, at any rate, that's at least kind of the way I see the subject. Of course, I'm saddened like everybody else is, but I think the solutions that the left proposes on this are really inadequate. But it goes to kind of a deeper problem in the country, though, really. It really is more of a kind of a decline of decency, I think, more than anything else. So at any rate, I'll wrap this up for now. You can follow me on my various social media accounts, which the addresses are listed in the description below. And I'll wrap this one up for now.